Oh, yeah. We're doing it again. It's time to close the week out strong, and we've got some massive freaking news about Warhammer. We also have some Marvel stuff. We're going to talk about that too. Ooh. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. All right, let's get into it. Ooh, welcome back to the Den of Nerds. I am Josh, and we have a fantastic show for you today. Absolutely massive news with regards to Marvel's plan for the X-Men. That's right. It's crazy. The director of the Thunderbolts movie, Jake Shrier, is apparently Marvel's top choice to direct the X-Men movie. And in fact, when you really look at the article, kind of seems like he's doing this movie. And I want to talk about that because I think it's I don't know if I would say it's a controversial pick, but I've seen some differing opinions about it out there online. I think folks have different thoughts on it, and that's all well and good. I'll give you my thoughts on it. I actually think it's an incredible move, and I have several reasons why. I think not just the fact that Thunderbolts was a really good movie, but it's unique in the sense that there are a lot of things within Thunderbolts that I think directly translate to an X-Men team, to a movie about the X-Men, and a movie about the mutants just in general. So we're going to talk about that. You know, this is a very interesting move by Marvel Studios because of, you know, maybe some of the lack of commercial success that Thunderbolts has had thus far. But there are some signs that maybe it's going to have a strong weekend too as well. So we're going to talk about that. On top of that, we also have some casting rumors, some more casting rumors with regards to the X-Men team itself. A very young actress being looked at for Jubilee. That's kind of crazy for a couple of reasons. I did not think they were going to do Jubilee. In fact, I thought they would probably do Kitty Pryde instead and almost make her the Jubilee. And I'll explain what all of that means and where my mind is at with that. But it's quite interesting that Jubilee is being cast and is being cast potentially with such a young actress. So I want to break that down. We also have a rumor about a potential another Cyclops, another person that Marvel is looking at for Cyclops, and that's really interesting. So we'll get into that too. Some smaller stories that are not that big of a deal, like there's a casting thing for Spider-Man. Some people are implying that this could be connected to Miles Morales. I don't really see it, and I mean, I guess maybe, but it doesn't really seem like that's actually that big of a deal. And I think there's a couple other smaller little stories out there with regards to like some DC stuff with the coming trailer, etc., etc. So we'll go over all of that. Now, I also do want to say, I found, and I'm so excited for this, guys. I'm equally as excited about this part as I am for the X-Men thing, and I'm very excited about the X-Men thing. I have found the perfect video on YouTube. Okay, the perfect one. And what do I mean by that? Well, maybe you didn't notice this, but I've been trying to hard sell you on Warhammer for a while. I know, it's crazy, but I'm all in on Warhammer. I think Warhammer's the next big thing, and I think we should all just get into Warhammer, and it would be good for all of us, and good for the world. But, to be fair, it's been tricky, right? I mean, Warhammer is unique because it's really hard to, like, explain to normies, and I've found it difficult to explain to you guys why Warhammer's going to be the next big thing. Well, guess what? Guess what? I found the perfect video. I'm telling you right now, we're going to watch this video together. We're going to react to it. And I'm telling you right now, the perfect video. It says it so much better than the way that I could have said it. And so I'm excited. We'll do that in the back half of the stream. We're going to react to that video. And I'm going to give a lot of feedback too, because the guy goes into what he would do with Warhammer. And I like kind of agree, but I have some differences of opinion, so I'll kind of like take it into a direction where I give my thoughts on it all. But trust, it is actually an incredible video, and I'm excited to watch with you guys and to convince some of you. So that's what's on the agenda for today. As far as show notes are concerned, nothing really doing. I think this news is pretty massive, but overall, it sort of felt like a little bit of a slower week in general. Nothing really going on over the weekend. You know, I've got some family stuff going. Of course, it's Mother's Day on Sunday, So if you have a mom in your life, and if you have a mom as your wife, or even I guess just partner, man, you don't forget about Mother's Day. Do some good stuff for the moms, man. Moms make the world go round. Moms literally provide a service that I think is just completely undervalued in our society. And it's kind of a cruel joke that we carve out a single little day each year just to recognize moms. I don't think that's nearly enough, but it is still what is going on. So make sure you don't forget, get your mom something nice, give her a phone call, give her some love. That's the way she goes. So that's pretty much everything that's going on over the weekend. It just, we'll see. Maybe bigger, crazier things coming in the next couple of weeks. I've got a lot of things I'm cooking behind the scenes, and we'll just kind of wait to see what happens with Marvel, Star Wars, DC, or any other nerdy and crazy thing. And then, as always, we will break into Q&A later on in the stream. I'm sure there are a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions, different things that you want to say, especially after I convince you all about Warhammer later on. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. All right, so shall we begin, ladies and gentlemen? And let's begin with this, a pretty big freaking story. This broke yesterday in Deadline. Justin Kroll had this as an exclusive. And it is that director Jake Shrier is in talks to direct Marvel Studios' X-Men movie. This is pretty crazy. And if you look at the actual article, there's a lot of different things going on. First of all, there's mention of a big meeting last week, and essentially that meeting put Shrier at the forefront. So it says here, might have his sights set on this. It's unknown where things stand on the deal-making process, but insiders say that following a meeting, this past week. Does that mean this week then? Okay, that's even better. Shrier looks to be the top choice to take on one of the studio's most anticipated projects. Now, they make mention here of Michael Leslie, who penned the script. And, I broke this down in a little video on the main channel and got that out earlier this morning because I think it is just that big of a news. But this guy, Michael Leslie, this dude was selected after 9 months of Marvel looking at pitches from writers before directors. Really interesting. The vision for Marvel moving forward and Marvel moving into the X-Men saga seems to be much more focused on quality than a lot of the stuff that we had going on in the Infinity Saga, which is good. And the production of X-Men behind the scenes and the just degree to which they are focusing on getting this right is actually pretty impressive. So 9 months of pitches, and then they get to Michael, and it would appear that they found their guy. Now, another thing it says in the article here, just because, again, we don't know 100% sure, this happened due to Thunderbolts' early reaction being really good. And I would imagine even from the screenings, Marvel was very excited about this film and the quality. We've talked about that for a while. They do mention in here that he is currently saying no to certain projects. So he's in final talks. They had a great meeting this week. And he is currently saying no to other big projects because, when you do a big Marvel movie or just a big movie in general, you get all kinds of offers. That's just the way she goes, right? That's why I was so shocked that Sean Levy went over and did the Star Wars thing because I'm like, dude, he could do whatever he wanted. That's how that shit works. So, Jake Shrier, probably the director of the X-Men movie. Okay, I would say 99% yes. And I personally think that's good. I'd love to know what you think. We'll get more into that in the Q&A. I will say a couple of things about this. Number one, I think this is also perhaps a little bit of calculus to try and help Thunderbolts in the box office. I think Thunderbolts or New Avengers or whatever is actually upticking in the box office. We sort of spoke about this yesterday. There's some data out there that's really encouraging. And if the film has a below 50% fall off into weekend 2, that would be absolutely incredible. That would be great and a big success for Marvel. They need another weekend like that too, I think, to get towards profitability and maybe even being a hit. But they have to start with weekend 2. Weekend 2 has to be really good, and then you have to have another good weekend 3 as well. So I think this news here, sometimes remember when Well, there's just countless movies that I can think of that have a good opening weekend, and the sequel is announced sometime within the first week after the box office. And that's usually just to try to get more attention to the film. You know, we talk about social proof a lot here. That just is still a big thing that matters in these different examples and spaces. The fact of the matter is, if you feel like the studio's committed to the thing, you're more apt to potentially check it out because you're like, okay, there's a future here. It's not just one thing. There's actually a whole thing behind it. And it also is just another form of social proof. It's like, wow, everybody's liking this. Usually the confirmation gets a big pop because people that like the movie are like, let's go. And that creates a fun, you know, kind of narrative about these things. So that is part of what's going on here. And in fact, like, frankly, to take it to maybe even a sort of more shady place, it is possible this is mostly that, and we're trying to see how the film does before we fully commit to Jake Shrier. Like, it's possible they're trying to make this connection and see, does that have any effect? How do people feel about this, et cetera, et cetera. The trades do often sort of reveal things or announce things because they want to get what the public is feeling. Like, they're trying to see how fans or public would react to certain choices that the studios might make. So that could be something that's going on here. Although I have to be honest with you, I don't think that's what it is. I think he's got the job. And I think he's got the job for a couple of different reasons. One is obviously he just nailed working within the Hollywood system, or the Marvel system rather. And again, you know, we talked about this briefly yesterday. It's kind of wild to me, guys, that you have Jake Shrier, you know, make this movie, and then you've got Bob Iger talking about how Thunderbolts represents Kevin Feige's new vision for Marvel that focuses on quality. You had that Wall Street Journal article that spoke about how Thunderbolts is the first film that represents, you know, Kevin coming back and focusing on quality. So they really are hanging their hat on this film. Like, that's just kind of been obvious despite its underperforming, you know, kind of coming in a little lighter than you would expect a Marvel movie to come to. So I think that's part of why they're doing this. I think the other part, though, frankly, is he's a pretty affordable choice, right? Now, look, that's going to sound bad, and everybody's like, oh, you know, what are you trying to say? But just hear me out on this. Let's listen to what I have to say. Marvel, over the past 4 to 5 years, has worked with a lot of directors. Some of them have a lot of cachet and come with a big, high price tag, and some do not. But I think the evidence would suggest from the past couple of years that you actually don't necessarily need a strong visionary filmmaker to make a good Marvel movie. That it might actually be the case that certain directors work much better within that system because they're willing to relinquish control and sort of play in the sandbox, right? I mean, let's face it, like the Russo brother example kind of comes to mind a little, where I love the Russos' Marvel stuff, don't love a lot of their stuff outside of Marvel. So I don't know that you would say the Russos are prolific directors. Do you know what I mean? However, they work so well within the Marvel system that they have made prolific Marvel movies. Like, that is undeniable, and hopefully they're going to make a couple more. So we've seen this before from the studio. When they find people that work well within the system, they tend to double, triple down on them. And I think there's two main factors with Jake here. I mean, they might be talking to other people. Like, I know people, there have been some crazy names out there that were potentially attached to X-Men. And I understand the sort of classic Hollywood thinking of being like, oh, damn, brilliant director, great body of work. What they could do with Marvel would be great. But unfortunately, I think that story has turned out poorly a lot. That exact story has turned out, you know what I mean? Even Sam Raimi, and I love Multiverse Madness, but I got to be honest with you, Feige was right. Aluma Waddy should have been out of there. Like, a lot of these scenes that Feige, because we've heard rumors of, like, Kevin did not love some of the camp that was in Multiverse of Madness, but he just let Sam Raimi win because it's Sam Raimi. Guys, I got to be honest with you. Like, that ain't it. Like, that's not how this system works. You know, with all due respect to these people with vision and all that, right? The vision should be for the great Marvel movie. Like, that's what the vision should be for. Anyway, Jake represents somebody that works well within the system, somebody that is cost effective for the studio And I would hope would still get incentives, and if he were able to like have a lot of massive success, would share in that success. Like the Russos now are rich. Like the Russos literally went from TV directors that were like pretty decent to like Hollywood royalty in a lot of ways. They're stinking rich, right? And like I would love that for Jake Schreier. I would love a trajectory like that where in 5 to 10 years we're talking about Jake Schreier buying restaurants and opening up his own production company and like just making massive fucking X-Men movies and being a big hit. But I also think you got to earn that. You know what I mean? Like you got to actually do the body of work and then you can reap the benefits of that. And I think from where Marvel is currently at and where Jake Schreier is currently at in his career, I think this is a good fit. He will make more here than maybe other places, but he will not cost the studio as much as, name your big director, right? So I think that's probably part of the logic of what they're doing. Now, I will tell you, I love this pick, man. I am genuinely very excited about this. I know not everybody is, but I am genuinely stoked. I actually see the vision. I see the pieces being pulled together. And one of the reasons I love this, frankly, is because it feels like such an actual commitment. A lot of times we say like we're committed to this or we're going to do this or we believe in this. But then when it gets hard, we fold. And that's just a human thing. This represents Marvel being like, hey, we're committed to quality. And even in a world where like legitimately the best movie we have made in a long time is now underperforming, we can still recognize that it's the best. And we still think doing stuff like this is the future for our brand. That is such a bold thing because, look, frankly, I have been for a while now kind of complaining that, like, Marvel's not going for it enough. They need to do bigger characters. They probably fatigue their own audience so much that their own strategy of using B and C level characters doesn't even work as well anymore. That's really on them ultimately, but they should adjust to it, right? And yet, I think, Kevin, and I think a lot of people over there, they just still believe the way that they've always believed that strong storytelling, great movies is their way out of this. And I mean, look, I love that. I think that's bold. And I also think, especially considering the turmoil, considering the movie underperforming, like that's how you know it's actually a sacrifice. Like that's how you know they're actually willing to eat shit and make a move that might be questionable to double and triple and down on what they think is the right thing to do. And I think that's admirable. I also think Thunderbolts was fucking incredible. It's one of my favorite Marvel movies. I went out and saw it again this week. I might see it again, especially now with this news. It just kind of feels like the stars are aligning for this movie a little bit here. And I might even see it again. I'm blown away by the movie. I think that Friday stream last Friday, I came in and just gushed about this film, the performances, the dynamic. And one of the things I said was, I kind of wish this was Phase 4. If this film had happened years earlier, and if this was Phase 4, I think Marvel would be in a better spot. So I love the quality of the film. I love that this guy works within the system. So that's one reason that I like it. But on top of that, I think there's technical reasons. I think the Thunderbolts film is like a perfect example of the team dynamic that an X-Men film would need. And I mean from the sense of like banter and character stuff, because that's totally X-Men. Like that is a lot of the juice in X-Men 97 is like subtle little scenes like that back and forth where like it's just little things, man. Like when Jean sees how much Logan actually loves her and stuff, like little moments like that. Really cool stuff. And I think that Jake showed the ability to handle all of that stuff with sensibility. But it's also team dynamic of using powers. You know who's going to be just like John Walker, but not an asshole and actually way more competent? Scotty Summers. I mean, that is what Scotty Summers is. And frankly, he has never gotten the shine that he deserves. He was trained from like childhood by Charles. Like he is an embodiment of like Charles crafting a leader. Scotty Summers is going to be tactical, sharp, powerful, a great leader. and he's gonna drive the scenes in the same way that like John Walker does in Thunderbolts. Guys, there's like Ghost using her cool powers, the super soldiers, Yelena flipping around using electricity stuff, Sentry doing his thing. Like, this is a cast of characters that has an eclectic group of personalities. They have an eclectic group of powers, and it all works really well together. So that team dynamic, that's important, man. Like, that's really a key factor to how an X-Men movie or an X-Men franchise could work together. So I think he's got it, man. Here's another one that I think not a lot of people are going to give him credit for, but it's actually a way bigger deal than you would think. Jake Schreier handled the politics well in Thunderbolts. Now, walk with me on this, okay? We all know, politics in our media, right? It's like, it's kind of a thing right now, and a lot of it tends to be really cringy. A lot of it feels self-righteous. A lot of it feels wild. Thunderbolts is a political movie, okay? Just listen to what I'm saying. It's literally political, not in the sense of like identity politics, more in the sense of like, nah, it's fucking Capitol Hill. It's senators, it's appointments, it's literally packets. It's like it is political, and yet it doesn't feel preachy. It doesn't feel like they're trying to maybe do a lot of heavy-handed messaging. It actually feels just really organic to the world of the Marvel story. And I'm telling you right now, I hope this is something that Marvel has also identified as a big strength of what he was able to do with the film. X-Men is political. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen, you mutant monkeys typing super shit. Listen to your papa. X-Men is inherently political. It is literally the government and the world hating the X-Men for being mutants, and the X-Men are forced to save a world that hates them. That is what it is. But what's the greatest worry that many of us have with the X-Men when it comes to Marvel Studios? It's that it'll be too, I mean, you might say woke, you might just say too on the nose, you might just say mishandled. There's a million ways to say it, but it basically means Hollywood's going to fuck that up. And if they fuck it up and they make it too cringy and too on the nose, and it has to be about the politics of the world, not ours. Sure, there's allegory, and I think there's incredible X-Men stories that really, go all in on the allegory, but it has to be entertaining first. That's the trick. And I think that's something that Marvel got away from a little bit. I think it's something Hollywood got away from a little bit. And so the politics of Thunderbolts, to me, always stood out. Even the first time I watched it, it stood out as maybe the best that they had handled that. Because, I don't even think Daredevil does it great. Damn sure Brave New World did not. And they stripped out all the stuff that they thought was too crazy from those projects. Thunderbolts was like the first time that it felt like I didn't feel at all like I was being talked to about the real world. I was like, damn, this is how the people in the politics of this world are dealing with their world. And it mostly served as entertaining. I mean, those politicians are funny. They're even Bucky's first scene when he walks up and he gives the non-answer. Guys, more of that, less of all the other bullshit. Trust. So, not a lot of other people are going to tell you this, but that's what it is. And so this is actually an incredible thing that he was able to do, and I think it's really important for the X-Men overall. Another reason that I really like Jake Schreier here, and it's just funny how Thunderbolts is such a setup for this. The Sentry is basically an Omega level mutant. I mean, he's a super soldier that taps into cosmic godlike power, has a dark side. It's crazy. But what I mean is, in a sense, they're dealing with an Omega level mutant type character, a completely unpredictable personality with godlike power. And here's what's kind of cool about it too. And I was sort of feeling this as I was watching the movie before, but now I'm really thinking about this. What do the Thunderbolts or the new Avengers decide to do with Bob? Can you guys do you see where I'm going with this? They keep an eye on him. They feel like they're the ones that have to keep an eye on him. And look, at the end of that movie, it's actually feel good, and they're probably right. But what happens when they feel that way about a mutant? Like, do you understand? Like, do you see where this could be going? Where this team has experience. It's working on multiple levels. Shrier has experience with how to deal with a godlike character within a plot, sort of using them as a device, but not losing fact that they're a character. That's great on the technical side of filmmaking. But from a story place, it's quite interesting that the new Avengers have experience with a godlike being. Their version of how to solve that problem is to keep him close and keep an eye on him. So I actually think that could be a beautiful setup for some X-Men versus Avengers conflict that we think will be built into the next saga as well. Because I think one of the things will be the mutants are popping up all over the place now. They're all really powerful and unpredictable. They need to be registered. They need to be looked after. And I think that's really cool. Another thing, because I'm not done. Another reason that I love this pick, man, is that Thunderbolts to me felt like a true MCU movie in the sense that it felt like all the things that I knew about Marvel were influencing the film. Despite being sort of a small-scale movie and operating on its own, I mean, you feel the scope of the Avengers. You feel the scope of the Avengers being gone. You feel the scope of the government and the events of Captain America: Brave New World. It just actually felt like we were back in a living, breathing Marvel universe that wasn't completely detached. And I think that's actually really important for Marvel. I think it's really important for the X-Men. The X-Men have to come in to a fleshed out Marvel world, and they have to carve their own path. And I think there'll be, conflict and all sorts of stuff that creates stories between them and the world. But it has to actually feel like the things, characters, the events, all of that stuff is working together to like actually tell that story. So I think that to me is another great one. And then basically the Avengers versus X-Men thing, man. Like, to me, I think they're building Avengers versus X-Men. I mean, Alex Perez has talked about this. A lot of different insiders have talked about this. Part of this will be set up in the Avengers films, but it's supposed to also set up the next saga. Remember, Kevin was at that thing late last year, and he said, when we did Endgame, we thought of it as an ending, but we didn't necessarily know what the next thing was. So it's an ending, and then boom. But that's not what we're doing this time. With Secret Wars, it's an ending, but it's also a beginning. And it's going to tell the beginning of the story of the mutants. Well, that's kind of interesting. That's pretty wild. And then I think to the report from Jeff Snyder earlier this week, where he talked about how the Thunderbolts, or the new Avengers, and the Fantastic Four, they're going to pop up in a lot of different movies. Probably your Avengers movies, but also probably the X-Men movies moving forward. So the guy that set them up, having them pop up in the X-Men films, building conflict between them in the next saga, I love it. I think this guy's a great pick, man. I completely co-sign this decision. I know that it might not be the most popular pick. I think there are, we'll get into Q&A. I bet there's a lot of different thoughts out there about this. But for me personally, and I've been real shaky on Marvel, right? I've been real up and down on Marvel. I respect this move, man. I respect this move. I respect look, they are basically just planting their flag in the ground on quality and on a dude that they think just worked well within the system. And I think that's the right move. It's like, despite all of the chaos, quiet some of the noise. What do you stand for? How do you get out of this situation? And they've decided on a path. It might not work. We might not embrace it. We'll see, but they've decided on a path. And from where I'm standing, I think it's actually a pretty good path. So that's the story on Jake Schreier, the Thunderbolts director. That's why I love this pick. I think it's really good. Several key reasons why. But there is actually even more X-Men news out there. So let's talk about this a little bit. This is kind of cool. This came out from Jeff Snyder last night on the Hot Mic podcast. Trinity Jolie Bliss is rumored to be in the mix for the role of Jubilee for Marvel Studios' X-Men film. Now, I don't really know too much about her. Apparently, she plays the young daughter in Avatar, from what I've seen. She's 15 years old, and she's being looked at for Jubilee. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. This one kind of shocked me, and part of why is because I did not think they would do Jubilee. Okay, Jubilee. If you've ever watched the original '90s animated show, Jubilee is the first mutant that gets like rescued by the X-Men, and she's sort of the young student X-Men character that we follow through that story as we learn about the more adult versions of the X-Men and all of that. And for whatever reason, I just thought they wouldn't do that. I thought they'd probably go to Kitty Pryde or like a different version of that. I think it's an inherent thing to the X-Men that, like, you know, Charles gifted youngsters, the young kids that are coming to the school, you know, before Harry Potter, like this was the thing with Charles Xavier and the X-Men and the mutants. And because I think becoming a mutant, or the X-Men books in general, is also an allegory for going into adolescence, like basically puberty, right? If you think about it, puberty is like all this change, your body changes, you feel isolated. It's very similar to like having your powers emerge as a mutant. I think the sort of young shonen-esque character is an important element to the X-Men thing. I just really didn't think they would do Jubilee, you know? So this is kind of wild. Like, this kind of shows that, at least to me, they're probably going pretty traditional with the whole X-Men thing. We've also heard it won't be an origin story, and that also works perfectly with the Jubilee story, because at the beginning of the 90s X-Men show, the X-Men are fully formed. They rescue Jubilee, fully formed as a team. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of interesting. And again, I don't know too much about this actress. I liked her in the Avatar movie, but also I mean, it's literally a CG character. It's hard to be like, oh yeah, she nailed that role in the Avatar movies. She could be Jubilee for sure, right? So I can't really like co-sign her like that, but she's obviously a competent actress. The age is right. I can't believe they're doing Jubilee, but that is cool. So, you know, even more information out there about the X-Men, because remember, they have a finished script. They probably just found their director. They want this movie out in 2027. So we're going to learn X-Men stuff really fast here, right? Really fast. And then one more piece here. This one's kind of interesting. Now, apparently Daniel RPK also chimed in on this on his Discord, but he's now claiming that he didn't support this. But it's, I don't know. Daniel's so weird. You know, he scooped a Daredevil trailer like on his Discord in conversation. Then he came out and like denied it. And when I talked to people that like were on the Discord, they were like, oh, no, yeah, he totally confirmed it. And then he just walked it back and said he was just having a conversation and not reporting. So I guess technically there's a difference between what he reports on his Patreon and what he talks about on Discord. But regardless, the main middle man, who is actually a more reliable account, has said that Patrick Schwarzenegger is reportedly being considered the role of Cyclops in the X-Men movie. And maybe Daniel RPK also corroborated this, maybe not. It's hard to say, right? But I gotta say, I like the pick, man. I like the pick. I can't say that I've seen this dude in anything. Has he been in anything that I would watch? You know what I mean? Yeah, Gene, get down, get to the chopper. Yeah, no, I think that would be great. Having a Schwarzenegger as Cyclops could be huge. He's in White Lotus. Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, that's good, I guess. But yeah, I think he's a good pick for it, man. You know, I think he's looks like a charismatic guy. We're not gonna see those eyes, you know. They're gonna be covered up. But I think he's a good pick. I think you can also sort of get a sense of what they're looking at as far as age here. I think this would be right for Cyclops. He's still a pretty young Cyclops. he's still pretty young Cyclops. So I think that we could have Slim. This could be our Slim. And I think we're going to find out soon. But a lot of exciting stuff happening with the X-Men, with the X-Men stories. I personally think the Jake Schreier thing is great. And it kind of feels like we're getting back to that early phase 1 thing in the sense that it's a lot of lesser known actors playing roles that we really love. And they're really trying to build this thing off story. Like they're going back to the basics and really trying to build this thing with quality, with stories, and they're planning for a big couple of years. So this is 2 years away. This movie's 2 years away. So I'm excited. I think it's good. I like both the picks. And even if these are not the final picks, they sort of show us what is the thinking for Marvel Studios. Like, what are they considering? And this is what they're considering. And I think it's good. I think it's good. Now, a couple other small stories. There was something out there about... let me see if I can pull this up. There was a big casting for Brand New Day. Lisa Colin-Zayas, who apparently is from The Bear. She's been confirmed to be in the movie and have a big role. And that's awesome. I don't think they talk at all about who her character could be. But there were some insiders claiming that she could be Miles Morales' mom. And I was like, really? I don't think so. I mean, I could see it, but she's like older. Miles Morales' mom would be younger, I think. So I don't think so. I think she's either the villain. I think this is either one of your villains or she's one of the teachers that they're casting as well. But I guess technically could be connected to the Miles Morales character. Now, when it comes to Miles, we do know that that's something Tom Holland really wants to do as Miles. Kevin really wants to do it. But I got to be honest, I think Sony really wants to do it too. So, they would have to have worked that out, I think, for Kevin to feel comfortable doing that. Because we all remember 2019, man. Like, we all remember 2019 when they yanked that Spider-Man license back and we were like, what the fuck? So, yeah, we'll see about that. But, yeah, more casting for Spider-Man. I think that that movie continues to take shape. There were some rumors about Thor 5 because there was a report going around that Thor was going to get a send-off and die in these films. But now we're hearing, no, they're actually going to do Thor 5, which we already knew about Thor 5, didn't we? So I think you're going to get Thor 5. The Extraction director is being looked at for that, according to My Time to Shine. So, yeah, little news here, little news there. Nothing too crazy. Is there anything else big going on out there that I missed? Any other big stories out there? I suppose the Superman trailer is probably the next big thing, which is rumored to be dropping in the middle of next week. Oh, that's going to be crazy. So we're, of course, going to be looking out for that. Is there actually going to be dialogue? How much are they showing of that film? We're going to be looking for that. But other than that, guys, I think that might be our news for today, unless I missed anything. Little news here, little news there. Yeah. Andor theatrical release. I heard something about that. Yeah, they're thinking about maybe doing some of the episodes and going into Rogue One. I think that's cool. That's fine. That might be the only way I would ever check out the show, to be honest. Get to the Warhammer video? Oh, I'm excited to get to the Warhammer video. Don't you worry, Adam. But I think everyone will get mad at me if I just... maybe we should just make sure that everybody else is okay. Is everybody else okay? Can I talk to you about the future now? Can I talk to you about Warhammer? The next big thing? Oh, hell yeah. Okay, so let me set this up for you. I have been trying to sell you all on Warhammer for some time. And, I've got into Warhammer about 3 years ago. And I absolutely love it. It is my favorite hobby. I spend time every day doing something Warhammer. But on top of that, beyond just loving the hobby, I truly believe it has the potential to be the next big thing, kind of like the next MCU, if you will. And there are reasons why. And by the way, just so you know, I'm not the only one that thinks this. Amazon obviously thinks this as well. Henry Cavill thinks this. That's why he is doing it. And it's been difficult for me to try to explain it to you guys. I've tried to explain it to you many different times, many different ways. I found the perfect video. And let me give this man his flowers here. This video is called Astartes Secret Level in the Blueprint for Warhammer Media. It is by a relatively small channel called Obvious Puppet with about 20,000 subscribers. This video has 3K views. So I would love it if you guys went out and watched this video on your own afterwards or shared it with some people because these views should be getting up. This is the best video on the internet currently, right now. It's the best video on the internet. It's the best thing on the internet. So let's watch this video together. Let's react to this video because I think this is finally going to convince you guys of what I've believed for so long.
Announced that Amazon and Games Workshop had after 2 years.
Now, hang on. Let's start from the beginning.
Back in December, it was announced that Amazon and Games Workshop had, after 2 years, finally agreed on a general creative direction for the Warhammer Cinematic Universe, starting with a TV show starring and executive produced by Henry Cavill.
Yep.
On the one hand, 2 years just to get the development gears turning should be a concerning thing to see. On the other hand, by every Warhammer-related metric, that is blistering fast.
Yeah, so just real quick on this, and trust me, I'm going to pause a lot. And that's another reason why you should go watch this video on your own if you want just like the full take, because I'm going to pause a lot on this video. First pause here. There was a negotiating period of 2 years. Right as Henry Cavill was fired by James Gunn, he literally came out that week and made the big announcement that he wanted to make a Warhammer Cinematic Universe and that he had started negotiations with Amazon. 2 years of negotiations led to the point where they finally had a direction. And if you'll remember, there were a ton of people, a lot of grifters that were making all these videos about how Henry Cavill was walking away. Henry Cavill was super mad about this, that, second, and the third. He didn't like Rings of Power or whatever, right? So it wasn't going to happen. And I think part of the reason that those videos went off is because it had been a long time. It had been about 2 years, and there were some concerns. But that all wrapped up late last year where they announced they had finalized that they have a direction. Okay, so I just kind of want to give you some context there.
Insert clever joke about red tape making things go faster. Here's the thing. From the outside looking in, this is the perfect time to get this sorted. Games Workshop and Amazon have been surprisingly patient about it, and the property has been on a recent hot streak. I know this cultural moment. It's 2008 Iron Man. It's the first season of Attack on Titan. Warhammer is on the precipice of true mainstream. It's a sleeper agent in the back.
So, like, look, this guy is recognizing what a lot of us are recognizing. Like, he can just see the moment. And, yeah, Attack on Titan Season 1, Iron Man in 2008. What he's seeing is something I've been talking about for a long time, and that is you have this massive franchise with all of these people that love it, and it has all of these attributes that I think would aid it in going mainstream and connecting with people. And Hollywood has figured it out, and they're doing it. So this is that moment. Whether it will actually pop off, that's yet to be determined. But we are at that point.
Of the mind of everyone who's ever watched a 4-hour video essay about Transformers or whatever, and it's time to take the leap by sticking Henry Cavill's big, beautiful square-ass face on it and selling it to anyone with Amazon Prime.
Yep.
The problem is, in predictably Warhammer fashion, that leap is less so over a scary but reasonable cultural gap and more so into a bottomless wormhole full of dream-eating monsters and roving space elves who turn people into living furniture. I'm doing something I don't normally do here, which is put on my producer hat and think about what's best for corporation, which is maybe less fun than just talking about writing, but will hopefully be interesting anyway. Also, in this particular case, I do think it's what's best overall for everyone. Now, Warhammer is, by a wide margin, the biggest media franchise I've ever personally interacted with, and by biggest, I do mean both in its internal scale and by raw text.
Facts. It is the biggest thing ever. Like, it's hard to explain to people, but it is the biggest. It's the biggest franchise of all time. Like, it just in terms of the lore, the actual books, the scale of its own universe by almost any metric that you can come up with. It is way bigger than any other franchise that I've personally ever encountered, and that includes Marvel, of course.
Hundreds of Warhammer books, 10 editions of the game, complete with lore-coded manuals, dozens of games, so on and so forth. And it's constantly evolving, which is my nice way of saying it wasn't always good.
Yep.
Warhammer has so much lore that is so insane that adapting it into anything comes with a more difficult question than most other existing IPs. Where the fuck do we start?
Right.
It's nowhere near as malleable as something like Dungeons & Dragons, or to take another recent sci-fi example, Fallout, because the lore is too specific and complex to be considered just a setting. It's also too massive a world, or in this case a million of them, to be strictly adapted, like Game of Thrones or comic book movies.
You can't, you literally cannot strictly adapt it. I mean, you could, but you then begin a journey that's almost as crazy as the creation of everything they've done so far, right? Like, it's too big to one in a show or a movie.
An entirely new story set during the relative present of 40K. Is it a character study of one man like Titus? Is it a Game of Thrones-like, covering an entire turmoiled planet? Is it an anthology? And if so, how can you possibly tie together the disparate tones of each major faction? Do you give movies to each Primarch, culminating in an MCU-style 2-part Horus Heresy movie?
That would be
There's
dope.
no right answer for exactly what to do, but from a creative standpoint, Games Workshop has hopefully paid enough attention to know what has been working for the last decade, and what hasn't. So let's talk about Astartes and Secret Level, and how they represent an established blueprint.
Hey, just out of curiosity, how many of you guys have watched either Astartes or Secret Level? Secret Level is the one on Amazon. Astartes was the fan film from several years ago. Throw one into the chat if you have.
For Amazon, that they would be downright stupid to ignore.
Simplicity.
From the perspective of a complete know-nothing outsider, Astartes and Secret Level, which the actual short is titled "And They Shall Know No Fear," which does not roll off the tongue in essay format, so it's Secret Level. Astartes and Secret Level follow an extremely simplistic thematic MO. Space Marines badass, chaos scary. This is the right way to start. I caught flack for the first time I said it, but I'm gonna double down. Warhammer is inherently pretty silly. It's hard to sell things fully straight to the general public when the most objectively morally defensible faction in your universe are the asexual cockney fungus monsters who kill for fun by virtue of being literally too stupid to assign malice. I love orcs. You love orcs. Orcs love Crumpin. You can't airdrop orcs into a billion-dollar Amazon show and expect John Doe to love orcs.
Yeah. That's I think that's a great point, right? Like, yeah, Warhammer's pretty fucking wild. It's really hard to adapt a lot of this stuff. So I would say, again, he's saying go simple.
You're also trying to sell them Henry Cavill as a 300-year-old religious zealot with 4 hearts or whatever. It's too much. It's too dissonant.
Yeah.
Astartes and Secret Level keep their stories simple and accessible. Space Marines are the poster boys. They're going to be the protagonists. For now, this means they need to be good-ish. They can still be brutal, they can still be merciless, but they have to fight evil, and they have to fight it now. Linear mission, search and destroy. Chaos, scary. I cannot stress enough. Chaos, scary.
Chaos, scary.
Because scary doesn't have to make sense.
I like this,
I love the warp. You love the warp. The warp loves you a little too much. The warp does not make sense, and both Astartes and Secret Level actually use that as a strength. Cosmic horror does not require explanation or even formal introduction to be immediately appreciated.
Yep.
It's visually dynamic and looks so inherently wrong that we're essentially already trained to hate it. This choice spares the Space Marines the indignity of having to be interesting characters themselves, which we all know Ultramarines are not. We don't ask who these guys are killing, why they're killing them, where all this insane shit came from, only why it exists at all, and what happens if it isn't immediately dealt with. Cosmic horror is so evil-coded, it basically acts like a narrative cancer. Anyone watching knows the stakes are high when the ground starts dripping up into the air.
Yeah.
This is still not a structure without weak points. Simplicity is easier to maintain in the format of a short film. Astartes and Secret Level Level are strictly linear stories. The characters literally move only forward physically through the plot.
True.
One mission, one direction, A to B storytelling. While that works brilliantly in a sub-20-minute short film, it's not how full 3-act feature films usually work anymore. And
and I think this is like really the ultimate issue that they're facing. And I don't even fully agree with everything he's saying here, but I think it's the best way to explain it that I've ever seen. Like there's obviously complexities that are going to alienate people, but the problem is the format of the short film and Astartes and, that little episode of Secret Level, they're also not complicated enough, sophisticated enough to be an hour-long show on Prime or a big movie or whatever. So they have to take it to another level, but they should probably remember to try to keep it simple.
Definitely not how seasonal television works. So is it really possible to keep things quote-unquote simple? Sure, and we're already moving in the right direction. Secret Level is itself a sequel to the plot of Space Marine 2. It's simple, but it is a character study in a way that Astartes is absolutely not. Titus is a man of violent tendencies, born from great pain and tragedy, but discipline is a virtue by which violence can be honed into something of value. Greatness comes often from dark corners of the world. Lovely stuff, presented mostly through effective visual storytelling. Simple. Efficient. Another reason to love focusing on chaos. The surreal nature of it makes things more visually dynamic.
And I'm going to make a point after we get further along in this about Star Wars and the dark side and how I think there's a blueprint there that can actually work really well within Warhammer 2.
Trying to do this with the fucking Tau droning on about the greater good and pheromones or however they work. When it comes time for Amazon to do this, don't forget this lesson. Make it as linear as possible without being bland. Keep things simple. Keep things squatted up. Keep things appropriately scaled. Now, before I get into scale, I want to bring up one lesser point that I know won't stick. Secret Level and Astartes are both animated, and I do think that's an important part of their success. I realize it's unrealistic to expect Amazon to make their big Warhammer series animated. I sincerely doubt it will be. They want mainstream, and whether I personally like it or not, that means live action. Henry Cavill is involved, and he's very handsome. The problem is, I think it's gonna look bad. Hear me out. Warhammer
this is actually a great point and maybe one of the most concerning things about the entire show.
Hyper-violent property I have ever seen. Grimdark is literally the shorthand for gonzo, oppressive, graphically violent misery porn in fiction. Now, to that point, violence is expensive. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the state of VFX in the modern film industry, but it's what we in the business call fucked. The Rings of Power cost $1 billion, and it looks worse than the original movies. I just don't think it's wise to hope that either general audiences will stomach people being chainsawed in half every 6 seconds, or hardcore fans will accept a grimdark future with a whopping 1 kill per episode. I don't know how they're gonna do it, I really don't, but Henry Cavill is hot, so they're gonna find a way. Anyway, scale. I don't mean to suggest that the scale needs to be quote-unquote small. Nothing about Warhammer is small. The wars last millennia, the battles last centuries, even the dudes are like 8 feet tall. 1,000 people get tossed into the grinder a day just to keep the Emperor plugged in. There's no scaling this shit down, but there is a way to use that massive scale in proportion to tell tight stories. And that's what Astartes and Secret Level both do. For thematic value and practical convenience, both stories put a small team of Space Marines in a compact, linear combat situation. That framing helps them look faster and stronger, like an unstoppable force blood-bathing their way down a hallway full of faceless malice. They start with the peons, but quickly come up against a slightly more interesting and otherworldly enemy. It sets the stage for the scale to zoom way the fuck out in the last segment. In the case of Astartes, it's the Orb. In the case of Secret Level, it's the Tzeentch Demon, or Sorcerer, Demon Prince, whatever this guy is. I like his eye flaps. The value of this is how well it communicates the scale of 40K without actually lore dumping. Space Marines badass, chaos, scary.
Yep.
There are mega men in power suits who literally tear normal men in half, but they are themselves but ants to the true horrors of the universe.
Yeah.
It's such a good play in Secret Level because it makes a leviathan of Titus's will. It takes a man and makes him mythic by virtue of a singular anecdote. You don't really even know what the fuck the flashback is about. I mean, maybe you do if you played Space Marine, but you don't have to understand. That's how you use scale. By zooming in and out at the right moments, you make individual decisions feel momentous. And
I agree, and I think Game of Thrones did a great job with this too. You know, the wall as a concept, which you visit relatively early on in the show, speaks to that. It's like we're zoomed in on these characters, and then we zoom out to a 1,000-year-old wall taller than any fucking thing we've seen that is supposed to be keeping back this ancient evil. And that's connected to the first scene with the White Walkers and all that sort of stuff, right? Yeah, I think that's an appropriate way to use it. It's like a zoom in, zoom out.
Make world-changing shifts feel deeply personal. It's storytelling 101, but you'd be shocked how many modern franchise slopfests ignore it.
Yeah.
So how do we implement the lessons learned from two very similar short films into a massive blockbuster television program? The answer is not anthology. It's actually easier to look at it by knowing the flaws inherent to both. While Astartes and Secret Level work, they're limiting storytelling philosophies. There's a reason they're so similar. There will be problems when translating to a longer, more episodic formula.
Yep.
So let's actually take off the producer hat and once again put on the writer hat. We know we have two more or less definite constraints to work with already. Henry Cavill is going to star, and he's going to play an Ultramarine. He's almost definitely not going to play Gilliman, though. That's too much to deal with.
This is actually where he and I differ a little bit, but I'm going to let him just explain his piece, and then I'll talk about my version.
Gilliman can't be the star, or at least shouldn't if Amazon knows what's good for him.
And also,
so we have Henry Cavill as a...
You might not understand a lot of what he's about to talk about.
Normal Ultramarine in what? The way I see it, you have two choices here as far as genre conventions go. A Western or a war movie. Let's start with the Western, because I think it makes a little more sense. Again, we know we want Henry Cavill as an Ultramarine, and 10th edition Tyranids aside, I think we want Chaos as the overall antagonist.
Yes.
What I envision is a character study built on the bones of a Western. Less True Grit, more Seven Samurai. Henry Cavill is either a very good boy or a very bad boy, depending on your preferred angle, and his team gets dropped onto a chaos-infested planet hoping to cleanse it. And they get their shit rocked. I don't know, maybe an Inquisitor is corrupted and lies about the state of things. What matters is they come down expecting Desert Storm, and instead they get D-Day. So ensues a race to survive and get off Chaos Island before the Imperium hits the Death Star button, while the Dark Gods tempt Henry Cavill, and his squad mates probably get picked off one by one. Preferably, you've got a parallel narrative working. In this case, I think it's best to run a set of flashbacks to either Cavill's character prior to becoming a Space Marine, or just a different mission of his that provides some backdrop lore and context for his emotional state, something that continues the theme. No clear politics, no ensemble cast, no secondary antagonists, just a very good or very bad boy trying his best not to fall prey to chaos in a hostile environment. Would that be the most fun? Probably not, but a talented team of writers can do a lot with it. On paper, Logan should have been kind of lame, but look at how great that was. The formulas established by the Kurosawas and McCarthys of the world have stood the test of time for a reason. It is a foolproof and therefore ideal plan. But hear me out. If you're Amazon, you want people to buy into Warhammer 40K. In doing something so conceptually safe, you're risking isolating and diluting your IP. If Logan was the first X-Men movie, who's to say anyone would have watched fucking Days of Future Past?
Right.
If you want to hit all the high notes at once without being overcomplicated, you have to consider zooming in on a massive event. I present, for your consideration, Black Hawk Down, but during the resurrection of Gilliman. Walk with me. With
Yeah,
a
I like
property
this.
the absolute size of 40K, you're gonna want to do some lore dumping, and while you can just do interlude episodes, they'll be weird if you're also already doing flashbacks for Henry Cavill. What I genuinely think would be the most interesting jumping off point for a 40K cinematic universe, because it's current year and we need one of those, is the resurrection of Gilliman. Henry
I agree.
Cavill in this case is a grunt or officer at best, but still not a priorly named character, and we get most of the story from his
he's
perspective,
not gonna do that.
pre-invasion of Ultramar all the way to the resurrection, with a parallel storyline running through flashbacks or full interlude episodes to the Horus Heresy. This is a higher risk play because there's much more politics, and so there's much more lore,
Yes.
but again, a talented team of writers knows how to drip feed relevant information, scaled appropriately, through the lens of Henry Cavill's perspective. We don't really need to fully get who the elf witch is or the creepy cyborg guy, at least not until the end. A more traditional war movie narrative plays into this idea very well. Cavill has a simple directive. He cares about his boys. He bravely does his part as things look more and more dire until Gilliman shows up at the end to save the day. Boom, you've uncorked the canon, and now it's time to start making many more stories about the current state of the Imperium. Does this come with many a pitfall? Oh, for sure. This is still a lot of relevant information, condensing the Horus Heresy, an era that will not benefit from a limited perspective and will probably have to be told from Gilliman's, will be a Herculean task even for good writers.
Yeah,
This show is
sure.
also, theoretically, significantly more expensive than a Western, and especially considering the way interlude episodes are proving pretty hit or miss across the business, may turn off people who just show up for Henry Cavill tearing cultists limb from limb. What this represents as a storytelling philosophy is taking the lessons of Astartes and Secret Level in stride to develop something more ambitious, risking confusing your blossoming audience in an effort to ensure you don't bore them. Warhammer's strength is how fucking insane it is, and while you don't want to dive in head first, you can only spend so long with your toes in the water before some fat kid yells at you to get off the diving board. It's not a great analogy, but the point is this. I spent the first part of this video talking about mitigating risk. That is the primary function of the producer hat.
Right.
But I also know that these two short films found ways to take these conservative philosophies and maximize them to tell exciting, ambitious little stories. You can still use them to tell a big story. There are surely countless other ways to go about making a Warhammer show than my two ideas. I'm not really an hour-long drama writer, it's not what I do. But that even I can think of more than one concept using two basic directives that clearly already worked is a very, very good sign.
I agree.
Simplicity and scale. Do not take them for granted. Space Marines badass, chaos scary. Do not jump the shark. Hardcore fans, do not be surprised if Amazon plays it a little safe. Safe can still be fun, and then it can be successful. And then, finally, I can have my Emperor's Children punk rock musical.
All right, so that's the video. Again, you should go watch this guy's videos. He's pretty good. And I think this is maybe one of the best videos I've seen that explains the value that Warhammer has and a potential way to do it. So let's talk about what he was saying in there, and I'll give you sort of my take, my version of it. So I think he's absolutely right to look at the more mainstream animated projects as a blueprint for what has been working with Amazon. By the way, just a little bit of a scoop. They are making another Secret Lair Warhammer thing. I would assume they're doing just another anthology, but I know for sure they're doing another Warhammer one. And I've heard that the Warhammer episode was the most watched episode by far, and that Blur Studios and that whole studio, they might be doing even more stuff with Warhammer in general. I teased this out earlier in the week too, but Henry Cavill's show, they're making logos for that shit right now. As far as I understand it, we could have an announcement as early as summer. You could get an official announcement with logos and some concept art for what the Henry Cavill Warhammer show is. So this is happening actually faster than even I thought it was going to. And again, taking it back to the point, I think he's right to look at what they're doing in the mainstream animated stuff. But I would also argue that if you look at the animation on Warhammer Plus, which is like their own proprietary animation, because Astartes wasn't even them. That was done a long time ago. They hired that guy, and they made him work on other things that are now on Warhammer Plus. So I think there's a whole side of this story that I think he's kind of missing by not watching those shows. And one of the things you can see within that show, and it is anthology, it does follow characters, but it's like they have an anthology kind of setup for it. One of the things that I noticed was every single one of them has this like really dark twist at the end, this big flip at the end. And so I think basically Warhammer needs to establish strict morality, chaos really scary and bad, and Imperium good. But I also think that you need to have the Imperium's also kind of bad in it. It's so inherent to the Warhammer thing that you need that. And I think if you look at the examples on Warhammer Plus, that is all over it. They actually go really dark, like darker than maybe I would expect. And so I think that Warhammer has been trying to figure out a way that will set up these stories and basically become accessible in a lot of the ways that I think he's describing. But I don't think they're going to hide how different they are than most other franchises. And I think that grim, dark flip, that twist, it's almost like a M. Night Shyamalan thing. I think that will also be in the show and within everything they do. So I don't think they're going to like make Warhammer Star Wars morality. I don't think that's what's going to happen. However, I do think it's useful to have some mostly good protagonists for normies to be able to follow along with. Like, it's kind of a tough sell that, like, everybody's a bad guy. That is kind of what Warhammer is, but it's kind of a tough sell to normies. Now, I think he's right about the Space Marines, and I think Space Marines badass is going to be the sell. I think that has obviously worked for Warhammer. There is a reason that Warhammer is even getting this treatment. It has had a massive glow up in the last 5 years. Coming out of the pandemic, their sales, their stock price, their success has been monumental. That's why any of this is even happening. That's why the Amazon thing's happening. That's why Cavill's doing it now. They're bigger than ever, and they're primed to go very mainstream. That success does come on the back of the Space Marines. The Space Marines going more mainstream, being more recognizable, being the poster child, obviously a big part of the success. Okay? So I think he's right about that. I think he's right that it's going to be Space Marines. I think he's right that it's going to be Space Marines badass. I think Chaos Scary is also an incredible lensing for it because, frankly, the xenophobia might be a hard sell for some people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be honest. Some of you guys might be like, I don't know, maybe the aliens are cool. And that's fine. You can go get their codex and build their army. Xenophobia might be tough, but I think most people could get down with like, oh, that warped demon thing. That's probably not chill. Like, do you know what I mean? So I agree. And I also think that is, that's really valuable. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a valuable lesson. I think that will absolutely be an important part of setting up the accessibility of it. And I think it's a little Star Warsy because one of the things that's cool about chaos in Warhammer is that it can corrupt you. You can turn to the dark side. And there's also a huge amount of fear within the Imperium of people being corrupted and going to chaos. So I'm tearing through the Eisenhorn books right now, and there's some really wild shit that happens where he actually studies a like demonic book in order to be able to control demon hosts, and that's obviously pretty shady. He considers himself to be a radical, but not a heretic, because he's doing all of this in the service of the Emperor. A lot of other people are like, bro, you're dabbling in the dark side. That's bad. Doesn't that sound a little like SheVP? That sounds like Palpatine. That is something that's I think, a very relatable, very accessible thing. This idea that there's this darkness out there, there's this evil stuff, And part of the way it corrupts you is by telling you it's not that bad. That's relatable, and I think that's good. So I think that's a basic framework that would help with the accessibility. Now, this next part's like a little lore nerdy. So he's talking about the Ultramarines. Now, the Ultramarines are the big blue space marines. And the reason he's talking about them and the reason he's talking about Gilliman is because within the past 5 years, the resurrection of Gilliman, who is one of the demigod sons of the Emperor, the resurrection of Gilliman was a massive shakeup for the setting. Kind of ever since the Horus Heresy, things in the Imperium have been absolute shit. That's a part of why there's constant war. Like, the Imperium isn't just bad, it's also kind of leaderless, fucked up. Yeah, the Emperor is basically gone, so he can't really run things. So the Imperium becomes this crazy authoritarian, fascistic, war machine. And it's real bad, right? That's a part of the tragedy of the Warhammer universe. Well, when Gilliman was resurrected, and it was because of the Emperor, of course, the Eldar Witch and, the stasis and all of that. But the Emperor basically brings him back to life. Gilliman literally has the Emperor's sword. And after Gilliman comes back to life, it's like for the first time in like 10,000 years, there's like hope for the Imperium. And Gilliman starts to change things, starts to try to guide things back into a better direction. And because of that, I do think Gilliman is a great character. And I would be curious to know if the people at Games Workshop, because they have this group called the Storyforge group, I wonder if they did this with Gilliman with the thought of how this could make eventually Warhammer more accessible in multimedia. Meaning, did they kind of think of the movie or the show when they decided to bring Gilliman back? I think that's part of it, and I 100% agree. In fact, I was working on fan fictions and all my super nerdy ideas with regards to how they could do this, and I think Gilliman's the perfect character. Here's though the one thing that I didn't see him bring up, and that I think he's maybe underestimating the value of, and I think it's part of why Cavill can be Gilliman. Let me set up his argument. I think what he is essentially saying is that it's basically too much. Space Marines are already crazy. You're like 8 feet tall super soldiers in big armor. The Primarchs are a level above that. They are like warp empowered, sons of the Emperor. They're like demigods. They're crazier, way stronger than the Space Marines. And I think he's saying like it's too much. It's too fucking much for the public. Which, by the way, what do you think? Do you think it's too much? Do you think it's too much or not? Let me know in the chat. And I'm banning everybody that puts Z's into the chat. You guys are all banned. So here's the thing that I think he's missing, and the reason why I don't think it's too much. A lot of the Space Marine stuff that's good has to do with brotherhood. Brotherhood and fatherhood and being a son. Some of the best Primarch moments in the novels are when they're talking as brothers and having brotherly quarrel and feeling differently about their father. It feels very over the top, and it's really it's a lot like the pantheon of Greek gods or whatever. Like, it's very over the top, but ultimately it is relatable. It allows these demigod characters in this wild fucking power scaling to be relatable, because when Lehman pulls up and sees his brother attacking something that he had sort of said by honor he would take care of, you see a brother angry with a brother, and it's relatable. You understand that anger. You understand his motivation, the way that they speak to each other, etc. It also is a big way that you understand the Emperor. I kind of think without the Primarchs, you almost can't understand the Emperor. This whole father-son thing is a piece of it, right? The Space Marines refer to the Primarchs as their father, or at least their gene sires, okay? And again, without getting too nerdy, Emperor DNA used to make Primarchs, Primarch DNA used to make Space Marines. So in a certain sense, they are father, son, grandson. That's kind of how that works, okay? And I think because of that, I think they can do Gilliman. And I think if they focus on things like Gilliman, you know, maybe having thoughts of his father, flashbacks to scenes with his brothers, you know, as he's being resurrected, questions about how different the world looks to what his father's vision was, how his sons, the Ultramarines, are faring in the universe and in the battle. I think that could anchor emotionally a lot of these very grand and big over-the-top characters. So I think you actually can do Gilliman, and I think Gilliman is the one to do. Now, do I think Cavill will do this? I'm not sure, because here's something that just happened that's kind of interesting. There's some leaks that just happened where Warhammer is putting together an anthology list, okay? And you know how a lot of you guys are always asking me, like, where do I start? Like, Warhammer, where do I start? How do I learn the story? And I've never had a really good answer, right? Well, Warhammer's figuring that out. And in fact, there's some leaks out there about a list of books that they are going to put out there and say, hey, you want to learn Warhammer? You want to know the story? Here are the books. Now, what's interesting is a lot of the books deal with like the early Imperium. There's actually a lot of Custodes stuff, which I think is fascinating. There's Fall of Cadia stuff. And it's this whole like set of stories. And eventually it gets to a point where then it goes into the Dark Imperium series, which is the Resurrection of Gilliman. So it's almost like, you know, maybe this doesn't directly translate, but you could think of it like Warhammer, the company, is already thinking about what is the most accessible reading order within their books to get normies into it. And they almost have like a big prelude period, and then they get into the Gilliman stuff. Part of why I think this could actually relate to the plans for the show, two reasons. One, there was actually a Warhammer writer that within the past couple of months came out and said one of his books is being delayed because it is earth-shatteringly like massive to the lore. It's going to change the Warhammer lore. And he said because they don't want to set something up in the television show that then will be contradicted with this change in lore, they're delaying and taking their time. What that means is Warhammer actually wants their novels and that lore to run pretty congruent to the movies. They want the same canon, not what Marvel Cinematic Universe does. Marvel Cinematic Universe looks at comic events and adapts it for an MCU version. Even technically Star Wars now does that, thanks to Dave. And he's like, fuck canon, you know? The point I'm trying to make is you can see within this a little bit of potential strategy. And I guess for me, what I'm wondering is, will the show jump right into the Resurrection of Gilliman, which I actually do think that's real, and I think they do want to do that. Or will the show pick an accessible point from the past to try and set up what the Imperium is, what the setting is, and then we eventually get to the Resurrection of Gilliman, perhaps in the first movie? Because I do think he wants to do both. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think this is a great video. I think he's thinking a lot of the same things I am. I love the producer brain. Like I said, all of this is real. All of this is happening. And I truly believe it's the next big thing. And I know there's resistance. I know some of you guys are like, oh, it's so boring, whatever. I still really believe this. I am personally hanging my hat on Warhammer. And I do think it has the potential to be the next big thing for a lot of the same reasons that other people like this guy think so as well. We're going to find out soon. I think this announcement is potentially a couple of months away, maybe a bit longer. And so we'll find out. And a lot of these same questions will be answered. But then there's still so many questions. Even when we know what the show is, there's there's going to be a lot of questions. So there you have it. There you have it. And we'll get into Q&A now. I'm sure there's still some questions about the Marvel stuff, some of the other stuff that's going on. Maybe there's some questions about the Warhammer stuff as well. By the way, oh my goodness, I am cooking up so much Warhammer content. Woo! Oh, I got some plans. All right, let's get into the Q&A, man. We will start by going over all the super chats, member chats, all of that. Then we'll get into the chat with all of you guys. And then we'll get on out of here. First in today was Javier Mendez with a $10 holla. Really appreciate it. No message, but appreciate you. Snorehammer, greater than LeBron James, greater than Bird. Yeah, 100% agree. Rossi, thank you for the rose. Purple Funk says, happy Friday, everybody. Josh, do you think there could be a time where Action Comics #1 falls as the Holy Grail comic? I think we might see a change. I mean, I think it's always going to be a Grail. I don't know that it'll be the Grail, but I think it'll always be a Grail. What do you think could take its place? Unity #1, perhaps? Joshua Campbell Bluegrass says, throw some love in the chat for all the moms out there. Oh, 100%, man. Moms make the world go round. Braden Thompson says with a $20 holla, that's very generous, says, I am not sure a guy who has only 3 total movies directed deserves the X-Men. But I like a lot of your points. And to be fair, he did great with Thunderbolts. X-Men is just deserving of the most love and attention. Yeah, I totally agree. The Russos were TV directors. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, like, I understand what you're saying, but I think Marvel, it's part of why I actually like the pick so much. Because, I mean, like, dude, Chloe Zhao, visionary director, you know, Eternals, blah, blah, blah. We went out and got a lot of, you know, visionary filmmakers over the last 3 to 4 years. And I don't think that actually makes the best Marvel movies. You know what I mean? I think the system makes the best Marvel movies. And I think the best directors for Marvel movies are the ones that work best within the system. So, I like I said, all the things I said, you heard what I said. That I still feel that way strongly. Would I have been excited to see a big name? Yeah, probably, because I also like visionary directors. But I think what this move ultimately says is, like, these are really Feige's movies. And if that works, we're going to, I mean, what a wild way to sort of get your skis back and to, like, really solidify yourself. This man's telling us through the press and through Bob Iger that he wasn't fully involved, and now he's back. It's like daddy's back. So we're going to see. The next few years are going to let us know, like, dude, if that X-Men movie pops the fuck off, we're going to have to give Kevin his flowers. And Jake, but seriously, this is a move by Kevin. You know what I mean? So with all these questions about, like, is he washed? Has he lost his fastball? We're about to find out. And I think this pick means confidence in what they are doing now. So I like it. Quid Pro Quo says, speaking on our beloved X-Men, what iteration do you want to see with the team, and how much or however many liberties should the MCU take outside of the comics? What version? I mean, dude, it's tough, right? Traditional seems right. I think it'll be traditional, but also, like, maybe characters like Jubilee and some of the younger characters will be really, you know, your average, more modern teenage person, which I think is fine. So I don't know, man. I think what's most important is that the team is good. I think you need to have the Charles as sort of the right way to handle X-Men human relations. Like, things need to be rough so that Charles looks good. Look, Chuck in comics is kind of shady, but I don't think X-Men works mainstream. It's almost like the exact Warhammer conversation. Charles Xavier works best for the mainstream when he's just the nice teacher guy that wants humans and mutants to live good together. He's actually a lot darker than that, but that doesn't play, you know? So, yeah, I guess that's kind of my answer, is, like, as traditional as possible. Obviously, you're going to have to change it, but as traditional as possible. X-Men 97 is the blueprint. Like, that's what you should do. Lo Mang Man says, the Thunderbolts sucked. It's just the same stuff, cringy humor, and just because they added depression does not make it as good. It's how they execute it. Right on, man. Shane Hopkins says, big W on the thumbnails lately, Josh. Kids and I love Thunderbolts. Much love from the fam. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. I don't know what you mean. I guess the thumbnails are good. I think I make some good ones. I think I make some bad ones. The Exodus says, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Corsair now confirmed. Yo, that would actually be kind of dope. That would kind of be dope. I actually like that. Joshua Campbell Bluegrass says, Arnold's son as Cyclops? Yes, please. Oh, yeah. I like it, man. I think it's good. Jonathan Staten with a $20 holla. Very generous, brother. Says, the streams and vids have been fire lately. Do you think we ought to be concerned with the MCU's adaptation of the X-Men based on Marvel's current handling of the team in comics, especially given the attempt at synergy? Take my money. Yeah, I mean, look, that is unfortunately a thing. You know, it kind of seems like Kevin demanded the Krakoa era end and that they get back to more traditional X-Men. And unfortunately, it just seems like it hasn't really been connecting with fans. It's not selling incredibly well. A lot of fans are very frustrated because, well, at least Krakoa was interesting, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's tough. How much should we worry about that in the MCU? I don't know. I mean, comic readers are different than average moviegoers. I don't even expect the same thing from my movies as I do my comics, and I'm a hardcore fan of both. So, I don't know. It's certainly a data point. I don't know how concerned we should actually be about it, though. Appreciate the love, though. Thanks, man. Vincent, thanks for 22 months, brother. Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. All Might says, think Cyclops will be done justice? There are old rumors it's female focus, which could work, but I hope he's the leader because in the comics, he's top tier. Yeah, I don't believe the female focus rumors. Those came from Daniel RPK, and we've caught Daniel in multiple lies. It's not that he doesn't have information, but he puts a spin on it because, frankly, he seems like a radical leftist. And I'm not even saying that as a judgment. I'm just saying that, like, if you just look at how he reports stuff and then what I actually hear behind the scenes and how his version of reporting is different, he's like a radical leftist. Or he loves pissing people off. One of two things could be going on there. But I don't believe the female focus thing. But at the same time, like, look at the X-Men team. They have the best female characters out of any other Marvel team. So a different way to phrase it would be, wow, X-Men has some of the best female characters ever. I hope they do awesome things in the movies. Expo City says, sending love, brother. I lost my dad to cancer last week, then lost my job 2 days later. And the streams in the community have been great escape while trying to keep my head up. So much love to you all. Holy shit, brother. That's a double dose of bad. My heart goes out to you. And I suppose it's good that we can provide somewhat of a reprieve. And so we'll keep doing what we're doing. I would say to you, man, like, don't go too hard on yourself. This is a crazy thing to deal with. Any normal person would have a rough time getting past this. So give yourself some time. Eventually, though, you know, you're going to pick yourself back up. You're going to make your dad proud. And you're going to go forward in life. But also, like, take a moment, you know? Like, I think these... everybody has these kind of tragic moments in life. I don't think there's anything wrong with sitting in it a little bit. There's like this anxiety sometimes that comes along with suffering, which I feel like it's just so silly. Appreciate you, man. Kaylin J says, new F4 reshoots. Article says they're filming a new post-credit scene. Bring on Doom, baby. Yeah, and they're filming where Doom is filming right now. So I think that that's probably what it is. Maybe he's even destroying the universe. We'll see. But, yeah, I'm hopeful for that. I think that's going to be cool. Fantastic Four, man. It's got to slap. It's got to slap. Delta Dan says, first daddy-daughter dance tonight. Wish me luck. Nerd Vengers for life. Dude, that's beautiful. I just shared a picture on my Instagram earlier today of, it was a picture Elisa took with Athena, like, playing with her brother's hair. And they're starting to like actually, I mean, she loves her brother. She like gets a big smile on her face if she can see him and watch him, and she's trying to be just like him already. But he kind of like leaves her alone, you know. He's like, what am I supposed to do with this? But they're finally starting to like interact more together, and it's really cute. It's really beautiful. So I know that love that a father has for his daughter, and it's gonna be a special moment for you guys tonight, and I'm happy for you. John Bow says, tonight I'm making Thunderbolts my first Marvel movie seen in theaters since Love and Thunder. Hey, how about that, man? It's a good one. I want to see it again. I really like it. Jacob Stowe says, F4 filming new post-credit scene today. Doom? I think that's pretty likely. You want me to check? You want me to check with some sources? Let's see if we can figure something out here. Let's see what we can find out here. I don't know if we'll find out much, but we'll try. John's Honest Take says, almost 3 years of support, and it's money well spent. I appreciate you, brother. Pray for continued blessings for you and the family. Thank you so much, Sean. We have a lot of people that have been supporting for a long time, and it always means something. Like every time I see a big number like that, I'm like, damn, that's a lot of support. So thank you. We live in a world where there's all sorts of ways you could spend your money, and on top of that, things have been tough these last few years. So anybody that's stuck with me for that long, I really appreciate that support. There must be something about what we are doing that you like, and I'm going to keep doing it. So you guys keep showing up. I'll keep showing up, and we'll keep nerd venging, you know? A lot of crazy stuff happening in the next couple of years. Xavier says, new Peacemaker trailer came out today. Okay. Scott says, happy Friday to all the nerd vengers. Here's to a great weekend. Wait a minute. That's all the super chats? No questions about Warhammer? Where's all the Warhammer questions? What the fuck? Aren't you guys interested in all the Warhammer shit? What the hell? Joshua says, Doom needs to be in that post-credit scene. I mean, yeah, I think so too. We'll see. What Warhammer book should I start with? Well, according to Games Workshop, it's a Custodes book. I forget what it's called. I like the Valdor book. I like Lion, Son of the Forest. I think Eisenhorn is a great series to start with. I would recommend Eisenhorn, yeah. Warhammer is two complications. I believe you when you say that. Are the Grey Knights sons of the Emperor as well? Yeah, well, so the Grey Knights were actually a faction of Space Marines created by Malkador the Sigillite. Malkador the Sigillite is kind of like the Merlin to the Emperor. He's a very powerful wizard in his own right, but he's not as powerful as the Emperor. And he creates a secret order of Space Marines that are all Psychers. A Psycher is like the person that can tap into the space magic. Most Space Marines are not Psychers. Okay? But Malkador was like, we need a super secret group of Space Marines that are all wizards, and they strictly fight demons. They live on a Titan. They live on a moon called Titan. They're all super secretive, and they're all very badass. So I like the Grey Knights quite a bit. Yeah, I like them. Rossi says, "Are you ever going to make Warhammer faction videos?" Yes, I am. Jacob Stowe says, "We're with you to the end of the line." Thanks, bud. How will they make Warhammer not boring? I actually don't think that's the problem with Warhammer at all. I think for some of you, when you say that, it's probably because it's so much that you just like reject it and glaze over. I mean, frankly, if you were to say Warhammer is boring, you just obviously don't know what you're talking about. It might be boring to you, but that is not the same thing. I mean, this thing has been around for damn near 50 years. It is having some of the best success it has ever had. Henry Cavill and Amazon are making live action versions of it. You're wrong. So, yeah, I don't know. That's not a Warhammer problem. That's a you problem. Now, I guess the question would be, can Amazon crack the code of like making it more accessible? Because I think that's kind of what it is. It's like too much, so people just like reject it or glaze over. Yeah, I think they can. That's like the problem, though. That's the issue that they're facing. Yeah. I love Andor. That's a selling point for me. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I will accept it. That's like you with Andor. I mean, look, I think Andor is pretty boring, but that's not my problem with the show. I reject the show because it's not Star Wars. I actually think even worse, I think it's actually a bastardization of Star Wars. So it's not that it's boring, although it is pretty fucking boring too. But if it was just boring and it felt like real Star Wars and it was like all the things that I think it actually is, because I think it's competently made, competently shot, well acted. If it was just boring, I'd probably watch it. I'd complain, but I'd watch it. What if Amazon Rings of Power's Warhammer? I mean, sure, that's like a potential fear, but what if they The Boys it? What if they Fallout it? What if they Reacher it? You know what I mean? Like Amazon, I mean, look, I don't really watch Rings of Power. I've watched some of the first season. I think it's stupid as fuck, right? But I think it's uncharitable to take one example that Amazon has made and like forget that they have some of the biggest hits, period, out right now. The Fallout show, I mean, I love that show. I think it's incredible. But even if I didn't, it did big numbers. By the way, they just wrapped season 2, and I'm excited for season 2 of Fallout. Reacher's maybe one of the biggest shows ever. Like, Reacher's stupid big, dude. Like, it doesn't even make sense to me how big Reacher is. The viewership on Reacher is crazy. And I think The Boys got bigger than ever. I didn't even think the last season was the best. But The Boys is, I mean, you cannot deny those numbers. The Boys is hot. It's a huge success. Obviously, a lot of people love that show. So, yeah, I think Amazon is I mean, here's the thing. The big factor is Henry Cavill, right? Like, Cavill is the visionary. If you've watched him in interviews, he doesn't just like Warhammer. He loves Warhammer. It's his favorite thing. He has said it is the greatest honor of his professional career to be able to bring this stuff to the silver screen and to be at the tiller, meaning he is in control. This is actually kind of interesting. If you go, and I don't know that this is like, some of you won't like this, but even AI recognizes the Warhammer Cinematic Universe as a high probability chance of being very successful. And it's mostly because of Cavill. And the reason I know this is because I asked ChatGPT the other day to look at every single coming cinematic universe. The Nintendo one, Elden Ring, all of these. And I was like, I asked it to put it into like a tier list. And it had the MCU and Warhammer in S tier. And I was like, whoa, why? Like, why do you think this? And it gave me like this AI breakdown. But it's basically like saying that Henry Cavill's the X Factor. I think a lot of people feel the same way. The big difference, like, there's not another Kevin Feige, but I will say for sure the reason most of the cinematic universes have failed is because they don't have a Kevin Feige and they don't have anybody even close. Like, look at what Sony did with Spider-Man. They literally have the most popular fucking character on the planet. They didn't put him in any of their movies. Look at what Sony did. Right? Look at what DC did. I mean, there's a lot of bad examples out there, and I think at the end of the day, it ultimately comes down to a visionary and somebody trusting in the vision. So, yeah, I think Cavill's the X factor. Let's see how the Cavill Highlander does first. I mean, they're filming that right now. That should drop around the time that the Warhammer stuff comes out too. Yeah, which, I mean, look, I don't know. Some of y'all probably like Highlander. I recently watched the first Highlander movie. I thought it was fucking terrible. And that's crazy. Like, I know a lot of you are like, blasphemy. Dude, you guys are crazy. You guys are crazy. It's terrible. But the lore and some of the things they have in there, it's really cool. Big sword fighting with Henry Cavill, I'm down. And I think even that'll be cool. But that could be like a nice little appetizer to what he does in Warhammer, frankly. Mm-hmm. Do you think Fantastic Four makes a Billy? Yes, I do. And probably because of the post-credit scene they're filming today. Yeah, I think it makes a Billy. I think it makes a Billy. All right, everybody, I'm going to get on out of here. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for another great episode. A lot of good Q&A here. I think the X-Men thing is great news. We'll see how Thunderbolts does in its second weekend. I'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll talk about that on Monday for sure. I should have another video out for you over the weekend. Comprehensive look at Marvel's new plan. You know, going away from Disney Plus, focusing on movies as the big storytelling mechanism. So I wanted to put all my thoughts in a comprehensive video. That'll drop over the weekend. Other than that, we'll be back at it next week. I think there'll be a ton of fun news and a ton of cool stuff to get into next week as we continue nerd venging. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day. And I'll see you in the next video. Is everybody gone? Did everybody leave? Leave. Oh man, another happy landing. Are you guys all into Warhammer yet? Don't worry. I'm never going to stop. So I hope you get into it. Otherwise, it's going to be really awkward, you know? Because, again, I'm never going to stop. Anyway, appreciate you guys. It's been a good week, ups and downs. You know, you guys were so negative about friggin' Marvel and Thunderbolts and the new Avenger marketing. You guys were so negative. You know, look at what happens in a week. Now we're all positive. This guy's doing X-Men. It's going to have a great second weekend. You know, just chill. Keep cool, baby. Just keep cool, baby. Hell yeah. All right, everybody. I really appreciate you. Thank you. Make sure you take care of yourselves. Get some exercise. Get some sun. Have some fun this weekend. And you know what? Do me another favor. Would you just open up your third eye? And would you just wash out your stinky butthole? All right.